Today we're talking about the Kims, both Hye-seong Kim, who's set to make his way from the KBO to MLB this winter, and Ha-seong Kim, the former Padres infielder who's now a free agent. Plus, the Mariners might not be making that many coaching changes this offseason. That's pretty interesting. All that coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, November 7th, 2024. This is Tidy Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today, we'll be talking about a pair of Korean infielders, one of whom the Mariners apparently already have their eye on, and another who also makes quite a bit of sense for them. Plus, Ryan Divish was on with our friend Ben Ranieri the other night and said he doesn't expect too many coaching changes for the Mariners this winter, which, again, pretty interesting. But before we get into all that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do is click the link in the description of this episode. So Justin Hollander was at the GM meetings this week, of course, and told the media that the Mariners are looking for infield help. And John Morosi, the professional yapper, has taken to Twitter to say the Mariners, known to be in the second base market, are among the teams that have closely evaluated infielder Hye-seong Kim, whom the Kiwoom Warriors will post this offseason. Kim, a left-handed batter, had an .841 OPS and 30 stolen bases at age 25 in the KBO this season. So that's pretty interesting. Kim, right now, we'll see if Roki Sasaki gets posted, but Kim is one of the most noteworthy names heading over from either Korea or Japan this winter. And obviously plays at a position of need for the Mariners. Mm-hmm. So let's start here. Who is Hye-seong Kim, Colby?
Yeah, he's a pretty interesting player. He is not an elite type of player. He is not even, at the same caliber as Ha-seong Kim when he came over, or as Lee when he came over last winter. He is not like at that level. So it's an interesting profile. My understanding, again, having not seen him play a single game and just reading the same reports as everybody else and all of that, my understanding is that he is a good to very good glove, but he's not an elite glove. He's not Andres Jimenez, but he's certainly better than Jorge Polanco. He is also a very good base runner. He is above average speed to maybe plus, but he's not, like a burner per se. Like he's not quite Julio fast, but he's certainly fast enough, and he's a good base stealer with good instincts. And he kind of steals bases because he picks the right pitches and gets good jumps and all that stuff. And obviously he has the speed to complement it, but it's not 80 grade speed. It's not an 80 grade glove. Both of those are probably in the 55 to 60 range, is my understanding. So the hit tool is interesting. High average, low strikeouts in the KBO. He is kind of a slasher. He, uses the whole field, slashes the ball all around, hits line drives. Did set a career high in home runs this last year, but it was only 11. And the KBO is known for being a bit of a hitter's paradise. So the fact that has no power and his career high in home runs is 11, he's never slugged over 500. It's a bit of a concern. It does, to me at least, seem like that would limit his ceiling to one of not an everyday player type. But, again, 25 years old, gets on base, assuming that skill is repeatable with the higher level of pitching that he's going to face now. If he gets on base, he plays good defense, he steals some bags. It's still a valuable player, just not a guy who's going to, he's probably only going to hit 5 to 10 home runs. But he is 25, so there is the possibility that you can kind of teach a little more power there. But the KBO is not as good as it's not as good as competition as even the MPB. So it's tough to judge these guys when they come over. And sometimes there's an adjustment period. Like Ha-seong Kim, it took him a couple of years in the majors to really kind of find his footing. And even he still hasn't quite reached the ceiling that a lot of people thought he was capable of when he came over. So you have to be careful here. What is the, what is fair to expect from him in year one? Is he, a platoon guy? Is this where maybe, hey, we still have Ryan Bliss and Dylan Moore on the roster, so if we bring him in as a second baseman, we can give it a shot if it doesn't work, or he needs to be sat down against lefties. We have other internal options. Or is it possible that they look at Kim and they've done all this work on him and they go, you know what? We think Dylan Moore probably gives us a better shot to be, an everyday player than Kim does right now. Maybe, maybe not, but there's a lot of interesting things about Kim just based on everything I've read. And again, not having seen him play a single game. I want to reiterate that.
Yeah.
My understanding and my opinion is that he's a fringe everyday player, but it might take him a couple years to get there. So if you're looking for immediate impact at second base, you want a guy who just plug into your lineup and start on opening day. I don't think Kim is that guy, which brings risk because you're going to have to give him a good amount of money and probably 3-4 years to get him to sign with you. So Kim, interesting player. I'm not surprised the Mariners have done their due diligence here. And I think maybe perhaps Kim might be better suited to be kind of a utility player, speed and defense utility player. But again, kind of have to trust the Mariners on this one. And until I see him, with my own eyes, it's kind of tough to give you guys a definitive, statement on whether or not I like the idea or not.
Sure. So MLB Trade Rumors dropped their free agent predictions the other day. 2 of the 4 panelists that they had on there picked the Mariners for Hye-seong Kim. They set the contract projection at 3 years, $24 million. So $8 million AAV. What do you think about that?
I think I'd rather spend the $8 million on, even a Carlos Santana or Justin Turner type.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of risk here that all you're doing is signing Dylan Moore's replacement.
Right, at twice the cost.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think, if I can get him in the $5 million range, I might take a shot on that. And again, do we wish it $3 million here or there didn't really make that big of a difference? Sure. But again, blah, blah, blah. We know it does. And at $8 million, I'd rather just pay the extra 2.5 and go get Brandon Lau, and have somebody who's actually produced at the big league level. And so, yeah, Kim is interesting. Again, like I'm open to the idea that maybe he's more than I think. But again, just based on everything I've read, he seems like he might be a pretty good big leaguer, but it's essentially you're signing a guy who, is in Double-A to $8 million a year AAV. Like that's pretty, that's pretty big risk considering how limited the Mariners.
I think you have to at least ask the question here, like how much better is he than Ryan Bliss?
Maybe. I don't know. I think a lot of people have that image of the 1 week where Ryan Bliss was like the Mariners' best player. And they're like, oh, he can do that all. And it's like, sure. But dude struck out a ton in AAA even. And
I mean, but is Hye-seong Kim $8 million better than Ryan Bliss?
I don't know. Maybe he might be. He might not be though. And I don't even know if Bliss is the right guy here because Dylan Moore is still in the organization. And Dylan Moore, I mean, is he $3 million better than Josh Rojas, who you could just tender at less than $5 million bucks and have him play second base?
Right.
Like, I don't know. And that's the thing is that the Mariners do have some options at second base in-house. They're not particularly good, but they do have, Dylan Moore is at least, a major leaguer, right? Josh Rojas is mostly a major leaguer, although he put that theory to the test for like 4 months last year. So,
yeah, it's just so hard for me to, understand who this guy is when, again, I've never seen him play. You've never seen him play. Mm-hmm. We're just kind of going off of reports, right?
Right. We're all working off the same information.
I just have no idea how he's going to transition to the major leagues, right? If he does what he's at least like close to what he did in the KBO, then yeah, he's better than the other options you have, right? But there's also the possibility, the very real possibility that he comes over to Major League Baseball and he craters. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, like, is he Nico Horner? Maybe.
Right.
He might be.
Right. That'd be great.
Yeah. He might also just be Dylan Moore. Probably look a little different than Dylan Moore, but like that's probably like what's realistic to expect is like a guy who shouldn't play every day, but has value off the bench. But again, the Mariners have to pick and choose where they spend their money, unfortunately. Do they want to spend $8 million for one guy on their bench when they're already spending, $13 million on their backup catcher this year? Like, it's tough to say. So I'm intrigued by Kim, certainly, and I'd be really excited to see him play just because I literally haven't yet. So I think that's fine. But I think if you're banking on him to be the everyday second baseman on opening day, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and it's another big like, well, maybe if this happens, then maybe you can have, and it's like, well, how about we just, again, for only like $2 million more, I can go get Brandon Lau. $2 million more and some prospects, I can go get Brandon Lau.
Yeah.
I can go get Nico Horner, and I would rather do that and give up the prospect capital to go get those proven major leaguers than to give a guy, $8-9 million bucks. Again, if it's 4 or 5, fine, take the shot. So I feel like at 8-9 million, you start to kind of eliminate other areas you can go attack in free agency.
Right.
So yeah,
well,
tough to say.
At the end of the day, like you said earlier, this is kind of one of those situations where you just have to defer to the team and defer to the league and how they value Kim. So we'll see. But it's certainly an interesting profile, and we'll see if anything comes of this report here from John Morosi, which, to be fair, not a lot comes out of things that John Morosi, quote, reports. So we'll see. So we'll be talking about Ha-seong Kim coming up here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Robinhood and Arena Club. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on Luka Doncic, Ellie De La Cruz, or Patrick Mahomes rookies just isn't in the cards. Now, I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, though, it is now possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and an explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 10% off your purchase. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So we just talked about Hye-seong Kim, the Korean infielder who's set to make his way from the KBO to Major League Baseball this winter. Now let's talk about Ha-seong Kim, who made the same jump a few years ago, wound up signing with the San Diego Padres, who he just declined his mutual option with to become a free agent this winter. And the interesting thing with Ha-seong Kim is that he's coming off of shoulder surgery. His agent, Scott Boras, yesterday at the GM meeting said that he expects Kim to resume hitting starting in January and should be ready for opening day, but also said that he might not be ready until May. So does that kill any sort of interest in Kim for you, Colby?
Not I'm not interested in him, but obviously that has to factor in. Now we did talk about this a little bit earlier that, the Mariners actually have some internal options at second base. So if they do have to cover for a couple of weeks before Kim is ready, they can do that. Like Dylan Moore being your second baseman for 3 weeks doesn't kill you. Ryan Bliss being your second baseman for 3 weeks doesn't kill you. And like in Bliss's case, you actually gain valuable intel off of Ryan Bliss, and maybe you showcase him a little bit. Maybe Ryan Bliss is the Dylan Moore replacement next year, and you learn that from these 3-4 weeks where he has to play. So it doesn't kill it, but it does have to factor into the price. It absolutely has to. And if you're Kim and his agent, you're saying no, that doesn't factor into the price at all whatsoever. Like no. So it's a bit of a sticky situation you have to work around there. But just in theory, am I crossing Kim off the board because he might miss the first month of the season? No, but I do have to move him down the list a little bit, particularly if he's looking for a 1 or 2 year deal. I think Trade Rumors calls it a pillow contract. You get a soft landing and you go out in the free agent market. And again, he is 29. So if he's getting a pillow deal, it's going to be a 1 year deal. So, hey, cool. If I'm signing you to a 1 year deal, but you're only going to be able to play 5 of the 6 months guaranteed, that's not counting any other time you might miss, that has to be baked into the price. And so, yeah, like with every free agent, it all comes down to the cost and doesn't make sense. So is there a number where Kim could hit and you're like, okay, like that, that's reasonable. Sure, there is, but you have to factor, you can't pay a guy for 6 months of work knowing that he's likely only going to play 5.
Yeah. So despite the shoulder surgery that he's undergone, he's actually been one of the hottest names here in the early going amongst teams. The Giants have apparently shown a lot of interest. The Blue Jays have shown interest. There's some other teams that are involved as well. The Mariners haven't been mentioned for him, but obviously makes a lot of sense for the M's because, again, he can play shortstop, he can play third base, he can play second base, right? Well. So, yeah, and very well, yeah, I might add. Really, the question here is the bat, right? How much value are you actually going to be able to extract out of Ha-seong Kim's bat? So do you think there's still more to tap into there, or do you think the guy we've seen is essentially who he is?
I think he's about a league average bat, which is basically the guy we've seen. Might have a 20 home run season in him. I think his career high is 17, might hit 30 doubles, but he hasn't broke 400 slug yet in his career. Pretty good on base skills. It took, like I said, it took him a little while to kind of adjust to major league pitching, but once he did, he's been able to put up a fine average and above average on base skills, good base runner, good speed. So I think when you're just talking about offense, you take defense out of it. I think he is, when you consider the total package, he is a totally fine everyday bat. It's just, he's just league average though. Like you can't sign this guy expecting him to go 20-30, right? You can't sign this guy expecting him to hit 280, 350, 450. Like that's not going to happen. He's not going to slug enough to do that. So, you have to be, but if you're just looking for a middle infield, like profile, like the bat absolutely plays at shortstop. It absolutely plays at second. And then when you go back and you do factor in the defense, he's a very good player because defense does matter. Base running does matter. And being even an average bat in 2025 at one of these premier defensive positions does carry a lot of value. So I don't think that there's like this huge step for him to take. But he might just kind of, have a year where he hits 20 home runs randomly because he's already hit 17. So going from 17 to 20, it's not a huge jump. So yeah, I don't think he hits the ball hard enough to expect the power to just kind of finally surge at 29, 30 years old. But yeah, I think he's an average bat at least. And that's fine when you factor in the defense and the base running and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about Ha-seong Kim because, again, the uncertainty around when he's going to be able to play, this is going to be a significant investment. This might be the most expensive player the Mariners are able to go out and get. And if the most expensive player you're going to be able to go out and get winds up not being ready for opening day, that's a non-starter for me.
Yeah.
Because also at that point, we're talking about him playing catch up over the course of the regular season. Is he actually going to be able to get some off-season work in? Boris said that he'll start hitting in January and he should be ready by April. But that's what Boris is going to say, right? It's the same conversation that we just had about Jorge Polanco and his injury and that report that came from Jeff Passan that was clearly, fed to him from Polanco's agent, right? Yeah. It's like, all right, that's an optimistic outlook, but what's the realistic outlook here? And so, yeah, knowing that there is a risk that he's not going to be ready for major league games until May, that scares me, considering what the Mariners' financial limitations unfortunately are and how big of an investment that is going to be relative to what, they're able to spend.
Mm-hmm. I think he's probably going to get about 12 million a year in that 12 to 15 range. And at that price, I think I'm probably out, unless it's some kind of structure where like year one, he only makes 6 and then like 12 and then 18 or something like that. Then maybe, but I don't think I'm giving Kim more than 3 or 4 years. Ideally, I think you'd give him one in like 10. Mm-hmm. And the 10 is because he's going to miss a month. So it's not 12. So yeah, but if they sign Ha-seong Kim, I think that's a nice move. It's probably the biggest free agent contract they're going to give out this winter, so pretty much eliminates everybody else. But they can still go make other moves around Kim in the trade market. That makes sense. So I'm fine with them signing Kim. I just think you have to be careful with the dollar figure. He's a nice player, but it's glove driven, and as we know, defense is not as valuable as offense. It's still valuable. It's still quite valuable, but
it's especially valuable to the Mariners because they are a run prevention team. That's how they're going to win ball games.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Do they always build the team to reflect that?
No.
Nope. They sure don't. Nope. But so we'll see what they want to do. But I think Kim right now is being linked to the Mariners solely as like, well, the Mariners say they need infield help. Kim's one of the better infielders available. So there we go. But we haven't heard any direct links between them. I don't think they were all that interested when he came over the first time. I remember a lot of people saying the Mariners were going to be involved, but I never heard anybody say that the Mariners had reached out or they had done anything with Kim, 4 or 5 years ago. So we'll see. Maybe things have changed, but overall, Kim is an interesting player. I don't foresee him signing with Seattle. But it's definitely a guy that they're talking about. They are absolutely talking about Ha-seong.
Well, they have to talk about everyone at second base, at third base.
Mm-hmm. But Kim is one of the better options, at least that we can see, that we know is available.
For sure. All right, so let's switch gears here, talk about the coaching staff. We did get a little piece of coaching news the other day. But according to Ryan Divish, who went on the Sea Level podcast, hosted by our friend Ben Ranieri, he said that he doesn't actually expect there to be too many changes on Dan Wilson's coaching staff this winter, which is really interesting and not really what you and I were expecting, Colby. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Game Time and FanDuel. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Game Time. And that was the case well before Game Time sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Game Time's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So once again, Ryan Divish hopped on the Sea Level podcast with our friend Ben Ranieri the other night. Be sure to check that out. I believe he's going to have Divish on a few times over the course of this winter. Ben's doing great work over there as well, doing a lot of really interesting write-ups. He has a lot of other interesting interviews that he does, and I'm sure we'll continue to do over the course of the off season. So, but yeah, so Divish said that he actually doesn't expect that many changes on the Mariners coaching staff. We did see Tommy Joseph leave for a job with the Orioles. That was the Mariners assistant hitting coach this past year. But Divish said that the only guy he thinks might not return is Carson Vitale. He also said that Edgar Martinez, he thinks he'll be there for home games, see about away games. So still seems like they're going to add a hitting coach, like a full-time hitting coach who's going to go on the road with the team. But yeah, other than that, it doesn't seem like much is going to change, which is really interesting. Basically, Dan Wilson inherited Scott Service's staff and seems like he might be keeping most of them.
Yeah. Don't really like it. Don't really get it. Do I have anything personal against, Perry Hill or Manny Acta or anybody on that staff? No, not really. But yeah, typically when you have these major regime changes, you don't keep the old skeleton crew around, right? You go and you bring in guys that you trust and that you want to be on your staff. And that kind of tells me that the Mariners don't really trust Dan Wilson to go out and build a staff. And maybe it's just he has limited contacts in the game, or maybe it's just, the Mariners kind of don't think the coaching staff was that big of a deal, and they fired Scott Service just to shake things up a little bit, which is, kind of messed up, but also some part of the business.
Or maybe it says something about Scott. I don't know.
Maybe, but
there's a lot of layers here potentially.
Right. It's weird. Like any way you want to peel back the layers, it's weird to bring in a new manager, a first-year manager, by the first time ever manager, firing your 9-year, second best manager in franchise history, like firing that guy, bringing in a guy with no experience to do the job, and then keeping the staff that the previous manager hired by himself. Like essentially, he picked all those guys.
Yeah.
So you don't trust Scott Service to run the ball club, but you trust his judgment in building out a coaching staff more than you trust the judgment of the guy you picked to hire the ball club or to run the ball club. You guys kind of see how we're like.
And again, you gave Dan Wilson the keys right out of the gate.
Yeah, you didn't call him an interim manager, right? He is the guy. And so it's
all just so weird.
It is objectively weird that Dan Wilson is the new manager, and yet he either is keeping essentially all of Scott Service's coaching staff, or he's being told you're keeping this coaching staff. Either way, that's weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what's going on here.
So we'll wait and see for official word.
Right. I mean, because for example, right, the Mariners didn't have a bench coach last year after they fired Brant Brown. They didn't have a bench coach. So are they just going to promote Manny Acta, or maybe they go and they hire a bench coach? And obviously they're going to have to replace Joseph. We assume, because Edgar's not going to be the full-time hitting coach. He's going to be they'll probably give Edgar an offensive coordinator title or director of hitting strategy or whatever. Right. And if he's there for home games, great. You still need a guy to go out on the road. So you still kind of need an actual hitting coach. And apparently it's not going to be Tommy Joseph. So, I would suspect that they're going to add a couple new faces, but typically a manager gets fired mid-season, the entire coaching staff gets wiped out. Maybe they keep one or two guys. And then the new manager builds his staff because he has to be able to trust these guys. He has to be able to work with these guys. And so he has to have some say in who is on his coaching staff. Doesn't really appear.
But again, this was not a normal hiring process.
Nope.
This is not a normal situation. This is not a normal organization.
Nope, it's not.
So honestly, the unexpected thing is the expected thing.
I guess. Like, I mean, I'm happy for now, at least Pete Woodworth is sticking around. Sure.
Yeah.
But it's weird. Like, objectively speaking, it's weird to fire a manager, but then force that fired manager's staff on your new hire who has zero experience managing. Like, at what point do you trust Dan Wilson?
I mean, are they forcing it upon him?
I would assume like most of it, yeah, because it doesn't make sense.
Or over those, how many weeks was it? 6? That he was the manager?
Yeah, he just bonded with Manny Acta so well that
maybe.
Yeah. The entire staff though, Perry Hill too.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. But not enough for it with Tommy Joseph. Oh, okay, sure. I don't think Dan's calling the shots here with his staff, and that's a problem to me. Is it a big problem? No, not really. And like I said, the guy's never managed before, so how wide is his net? I don't know, but it's weird. Yeah, I mean, it's just at the end of the day, it's very weird to run back when you said coaching is the problem because you fired the manager. And then you just run it back with the same group, just a new manager.
Either says a lot about Scott or something else is going on.
Something weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would be willing to bet that it's less to do with something really bad about Scott and more to do with something weird behind the scenes is going on here. But that's just a total guess on my part. Like I said, it's not a huge deal. It's just weird. Like that, I just don't know how it's a weird thing to do.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Fanfiction Friday is back tomorrow. We'll have the tweet up so you can submit your marriage trade proposals under there. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG and Colby at MLB Colby. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.